Recording.
Okay, it is 10:03 and it is July 11th, and we're calling the meeting of the Vermont Community Broadband Board to order. Just get the agenda over here, my screen. So for roll call, we have Holly, Brian, Dan, and myself as attend. Everybody that I've just listed is attending in person. I'm attending virtually. Laura is going to be joining us, but she's not there yet. From staff, we have Christine, Stan, Rob, and Alyssa all in person. We are going to delay approval of the minutes, but I'm going to take a motion to approve the agenda. I will move it that we approve the agenda as provided in our board packet. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion?
Yes, Patty, had a very informative discussion about policy under 8086E and 8086F in executive session at the last meeting pertaining to specific applications. There was in that discussion, Brian, myself, and Laura, and we did begin to come to conclusions about where we thought the board might head in its policy determination regarding universal service plan and the changing nature of universal service plan based on other construction that may be happening in the field. Those discussions really merit the board's full consideration. In other words, both you and Dan should weigh in, and we need to conclude those discussions in order to complete our analysis of these grant applications. There's quite a lot of money on the table here. So I'm just suggesting to you, we could have that conversation and then be prepared to do the grant, but that would change a lot of people's calendars this morning. So I'm just alerting you that if we can't change the agenda order, I will be moving to table the decisions as they come up until we've had that policy discussion.
Holly, do you have an idea of how long the discussion would take? Or do you think this is a 10-minute issue or an hour and 10 minutes?
I think it's an hour or less.
Okay.
Yeah, let me add too, that would be done in executive session because the issues we're talking about are related to other applications in these areas, so that there's a competitive nature to this discussion. Is that correct, Holly?
I don't know, Stan, what do you think?
I think because it's a legal interpretation, it'd be attorney-client privilege.
Oh.
Okay. I mean, that squarely moves it into executive session. Stan and Christine, do you concur that we need to conclude that discussion? And the other question I have is, was there any action taken by the board at the last meeting on this issue?
Yeah, there was no action taken.
Because it was an executive session.
Yeah. And I would say that, because I would say, yeah, I don't think it'll take an hour, but, because I think, I think there's some clear legal lines here, so it'll be an interesting discussion.
So Christine, you're recommending we move into executive session to take this up?
Yes.
Okay.
We do need Laura present, I would think, but.
And Laura is how far away? Do we know?
Well, she said 15 minutes late, so that would put her 4 minutes away. And I would say it's important to get this out because there are some strong opinions on the board, various opinions, and it'd be nice to have a united position.
Okay.
So we could hear, if there are witnesses for CV Fiber, for example, we could hear whatever presentation is going to be made this morning on CV Fiber, and just table the decision on that. The question is whether or not additional testimony would be taken once the board has its policy approach established. That makes sense.
Anything to be productive in the time.
Melissa, do you have a comment?
Can I make a suggestion? Can we do the executive policy first, get that out of the way, because we don't need anyone that's not here. Rob's been working in the background to try and move CV fiber to later, just to make time. So
I was told that was not going to be possible, but okay.
we're gonna try and do it at lunch.
Move them to 12:30. I was able to get a sign off to move them at 12:30 since they're gonna, my impression is they're gonna be the quickest of the proposals that we're reviewing.
And they being CV fiber. Correct?
Just went quiet again, Patty.
So they being CV fiber?
Yes.
Yeah.
Not sure why this microphone is cutting out.
It's just when you turn, when you look at the camera, it sounds
Okay.
fine.
All right, I gotta get it closer. All right, if there are no objections, let's reorder the agenda then. What I'm hearing is to move CV fiber to lunchtime,
12:30.
12:30, and to take up, what item is, what item did you propose, Melissa?
I think it's 5, maybe. Hold on.
I have 5 as NEK broadband amendment decision.
Mm.
6, approval of executive director authority policy. There we go.
We could do that earlier.
All right, let's move that up and get started on that. And then we'll move CV fiber to 12:30.
We got chaos.
Minutes as well since we can't approve.
And
Then we
minutes
get
will move
minutes till Laura comes.
for the end.
I have chaos. They're moving the agenda around, so.
Rob, is there any way to mute non-board members?
Sure. So, Steve, someone is having trouble joining the meeting and joining via phone.
Okay.
I believe I successfully muted.
Okay. All right. With those changes, is there any further discussion on the agenda? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of the revised agenda, please say aye.
Right.
Any opposed? The ayes carry. All right, so we are also going to, as we discussed, move the approval of the minutes. So the first up is approval of the executive director authority policy. And Christine, I'm going to ask you to tee that up for us.
Yeah, okay, so if you go to page 17 of your board packet, you will find that policy. You know, I try to capture everything that the board would expect. I do notice, you know, and I think the issue, what the board tasked me with the identifying a policy that sets the financial decision limitations as well as personnel. And I looked, I know what I was thinking, but I noticed that I missed something important in this position about personnel. So if you want to, I'll quickly go through this. You know, identify the mission, objectives, and strategic priorities of the VCB, engaging in ongoing planning process of the board.
Christine, before you tee that up, can you just reset the table and explain why this is important to do? Like, what is the overall conceptual model of why we're doing this?
Well, the concept was the board. I had on the parking lot, I had 2 action items. One, identify the director's financial decision-making capacity in terms of dollars, as well as personnel hiring policy in terms of what permissions I need to get from the board. When I looked at that, you know, standard, you know, I'm used to working with an executive director policy So I kind of tried to capture everything in one, which I realize may involve way too much discussion now that I have it in front of us. So
We're not.
or not. Yeah. So I tried to capture everything in here.
Assuming everybody's read it, are you ready for questions?
Yes, but I want to point out one problem statement here that needs to be changed. When I talked about approving of personnel, number 8, ensure that positions, jobs are prepared and reviewed. Such completed description will not require board approval. Such completed descriptions for job positions that are in the budget will not require additional board approval. So I recommend that change, that we insert such completed descriptions that are approved in the budget. Is what that should have said.
That's a good catch.
Yeah, that was almost embarrassing when I saw it. I was like, oh. Then the other thing to point out is the financials. Number 17. I think these are the 2 areas the board is going to be most focused on. Administer the approved budget, including approval of non-budgeted items up to $250,000. The executive director will inform the board of any non-budgeted items that exceed $50,000. In other words, you give me a $250,000 proposal, but I do think anything over $50,000 you should know at the next board meeting. Otherwise, you will see it in the monthly report. You know, but I'm saying anything under $50,000 becomes a somewhat minor change that I don't necessarily need to specifically inform the board on, but that will show up in the monthly budget report.
I have never, may I, Patty, ask you a question?
Go
I
ahead.
have never worked in a job where I would have authority to spend $250,000 outside the budget. So tell me what scenario prompts you to have that level of decision making?
Well, for example, we have asked one of our vendors to do an additional review of the Chittenden County towns, and then that could authorize up to another 150,000. 250,000 is actually what's in the federal guidelines for the grant requirements.
The federal guidelines give specificity over executive directors.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
That surprises me.
No, it says that you don't need federal approval
For changes.
for changes. In budget. In other words, if you want to change your budget, you need to get federal government approval for 250,000 or more.
It's a federal
Yeah,
process.
I'm with Holly. I flag that as well. I think that's really, I think that's a big number.
Yeah, I originally came in with 50,000. The board suggested it would be higher, so
Yeah.
that was my original plan, was for 50,000. It's up to the board.
I mean, what does the board members think 50 is too low?
I don't think 50 is too low, but I'm the 250,000. I just have visions of the state auditor in my head.
Yeah.
And where, where the chain of command piece goes. Because successive decisions at 250,000 could run through a big portion of the budget pretty quickly. And that's the problem.
I'm willing to go with 50,000. That was my original intent. So
I think 50 is reasonable. If we run into a situation where you're constantly feeling that you're raising the flag on that and it's just wasting time, then we can change it. But I would start at 50.
Especially since we're meeting very
yeah,
periodically.
I'm okay. I'm perfectly okay with that. That's
So is there other, Patty, may I raise questions about number 1?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
I think that the reason why the Act 71 establishes directors on the board that are appointed by public bodies like the Senate and the House, et cetera, is because we're beholden to create policy and ensure the mission. I don't think we can delegate that level of direction to the executive director. I think the executive director can implement objectives and strategic priorities approved by the board or consistent with the mission established by the board and the act. But I don't think that the executive director can identify the mission unilaterally. Does that make sense?
Unilaterally, I agree with that.
Yeah.
So we need to reword this a bit.
We changed identify to implement.
Implement.
That works.
But not periodically engaging, but I think the whole second line should just be struck and identify the mission, implement the mission objectives and strategic priorities established by the VCBB.
I think that's a good catch, Holly.
Thanks.
So we're going to strike the periodic by period, everything after by and beyond.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Christine, I just had a minor change at the very bottom, last page, under responsibility. It refers to the CEO shall report. Change that to executive director.
Oh, thank you.
And there's two CEO references in there.
So we're going to change 17 to say administer the including approval of non-budget items up to $50,000. Put a period at the end of that.
Yep.
Okay, got it.
Okay, anything else?
I move to adopt this policy as amended.
I'll second that motion. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Right.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay,
I'm not voting.
Thank you.
thank you. Hello, Laura, welcome. Okay, the authority of the executive director as amended is approved. Let's go back to our agenda. Laura, we moved the agenda around a little bit. The CV fiber application is going to be taken up at 12:30. And we are also going to move into executive session to discuss the Universal Service Plan discussion that was held at the last board meeting. And we're going to take that up now. Is there anything else that we want to do before we make the change to go into executive session to talk about Universal Service Plan, attorney-client confidentiality?
I just want to catch up on the schedule. So 12:30 is CB fiber. I had a 12 o'clock meeting. So when are we breaking?
As soon as we can get through this.
No, I just need to let the person know that I'm meeting. So is there any established break time?
Noon is still the goal.
We're looking earlier because
It really depends on how long this executive session takes. Right now, we just switched things that we should stay on schedule.
But we have CV fiber scheduled for 12:30.
12:30, yeah, we started early. but we're trying to
Yeah, it means
keep it on time,
that means to get lunch, you're going to have to run out and get lunch and bring it back in.
Or we end earlier.
Just for future reference. I do take advantage of the time here to schedule meetings, so. Okay. Great.
Okay, I'm going to make a motion that we move into executive session to discuss the Universal Service Plan policy discussion, which we're moving into executive session as it entails attorney-client privileged information. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, Holly seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
I
Any opposed? All right, we're going to go
Formally
to,
invite staff.
Oh, yeah,
And
you
yes,
need to formally
thank you.
invite staff.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Rob. And staff is invited to this discussion, and staff being Christine, Stan, Rob, and Alyssa. Rob, before we exit, can you instruct us where to go for the executive session link?
We will invite you directly, Patty.
Okay.
We're gonna close out this meeting and do our best to get you back on the big screen.
And do the people who might, of the public, know what time to reconvene with us?
I sent out an updated agenda. It all
At
depends on,
12:30.
well, we're gonna convene before then. We have things after this before lunch. So stay tuned.
We
Can we-
expect this
can we
discussion
just
to
mute
last
this
no more
and
than
then-
an hour.
I'll go into executive session. on
No, we're gonna
computers.
need to use that one. I'm gonna mute it. I'm gonna keep it open on here, but mute it.
Oh, you're gonna keep it open on
We're
there.
gonna try to get Patty on the big screen.
All right, sounds good.
So
So do I need to do anything here? or
you need to hang up.
All right, I'm hanging up.
Make sure the room can hear us. Patty, can you hear us?
Yes,
Are you-
Yes,
You
I
can hear
guess.
us?
That was yes.
Okay, we're in public session again.
Okay, okay. Are we ready to convene? Or
Yes.
reconvene, I should say. So we've exited executive session, is now 11:42. I'm just going to report out for the minutes that no action was taken in executive session. So on our agenda, we are now moving on to pull the agenda up. Give me a second here.
Yeah, the DV fiber
We're
application.
moving to DV fiber application. Great, Christine, do you want to tee this up for us?
Yes, we're actually going to turn this right over to DV fiber to do their presentation to the board.
Well, there isn't a presentation. They gave their presentation. It's for the board to ask questions. Those board members.
Oh, that's right. It was last week.
Weren't
Yeah.
present. They may have some things they want to share. So David Jones, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Rob. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I'm going to add a spotlight to you. Stephen John, are you also present here? I know you were having some technical difficulties. I don't see Stephen, but
Hey, Rob, this is James Hamilton. I have Stephen on the other line. If you guys move over to the executive session, he's having some technical difficulties. So
okay,
I'm on
well,
hold.
we're not in executive session yet.
Correct.
So I'm going to spotlight. No, it is what it is.
So DV fiber presented last week to the board members that were present, which was Holly, Laura, and Brian. There were no, I don't think there were any questions from the board about the application, so I'm sure where to take it from here.
This is Deerfield Valley.
Deerfield Valley, yeah, sorry. So I'm not sure what to do at this point.
So I think it just warrants some just review of what is being funded in this grant application with overbuild in mind. So how much of this grant is for overbuilt areas, and can you highlight in our statutes, the statement about overbuild is it goes through a served area to get to an unserved area. And so I just would love some description of how much of the financing is for an area that is already served in order to serve unserved households.
Yes.
And I think added to that is the question, we asked the question about, I think you got to in your phase 3, you're at 36%. You're counting on 36% of the drops in your incidental overbuild. So maybe you can explain that as well. As part of
Yes,
that.
we're prepared to explain this, and we would greatly prefer to do so in executive session. May we go to executive session for that purpose?
Patty, is that okay with you? Or she?
Can you explain what aspect would be treated as executive session material?
We're going to be discussing our build plans, the sequence of our build plans, the scope of our build plans, and we believe that all of this is proprietary and confidential.
Okay, that's the word I'm looking for. All right, so I'm happy to move into executive session as the information is proprietary to the CUD DV fiber. Is there a second? I'll make a motion to. Okay, we have a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, we can move over to executive session.
We have to say who was included in the executive session.
So
Yeah,
all the board members, the VCBB staff, and as well as representatives from DV Fiber. I believe that's David Jones and James Hamilton. And should we include Telus as well from CTC?
CTC.
Stephen John.
Then Stephen
Yeah.
John. Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
Stephen John. Also, we'll have with us Keith Thompson, and we would like to have join us Fletcher Kittredge, Karam Durdag, and Chris Whalen from GWI.
And Ann Manwaring, please.
Oh, and thank you.
Okay.
Patty, excuse
That
me,
list
can we please give folks that are on the line just a sense of when we're coming back? And this is kind of an unusual day, and we're asking a lot of people to be flexible.
DV Fiber folks, do you have an estimate of time that it will take? Half an hour, 45 minutes?
Well, we think our explanation is going to be abundantly clear, and it shouldn't take more than 15 or 20 minutes, but I can't anticipate all of your questions.
I'm going to estimate between 30 minutes and 45 minutes.
Let's move over to executive session.
Okay.
Okay.
So with that, let's leave this meeting session and head to executive session.
Okay, we'll see you there. Thank you. Our request is 21,945,429.
Okay.
That's what I have.
Yeah, that's what I have.
Okay, the minutes, they're not the minutes, the material in the packet are wrong. So 21, what is the number again?
945, 429.
Okay, one voice. I can't hear. One voice.
21,945,439.
21,945,439.
Rob, it's David. I had 429, but
That's what I have.
429.
That's what I have here, 429. I was gonna say, I was gonna argue for $10, but
Okay, I'm gonna put a motion on the table that we approve DV Fiber's construction grant request of $21,945,429. Is there a second?
I'll second it. And I'll note that there is an overbuild in this application that we have considered as cost-effective method of reaching and underserved addresses. We've verified that it's incidental to the Universal Service Plan. And we have, through testimony and the application of the CUD, distinguished and underserved areas, as well as considered discussions with incumbent and small carriers. And so it supports this motion.
Thank you. So that was a second with
It was.
that explanation. Is there any further discussion?
Penny,
Yes.
I am going to be recusing myself from the vote on this construction grant amount because my husband serves on the DB5 board.
Thank you very much for letting us know that and being very public about that. We appreciate that. All right, let's take a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, please say no.
And let the record reflect.
Yep,
that
the record show that there's one abstention due to a conflict of interest in
And
board
one-
representation.
And one absence, Patty.
Sorry, I can't, the camera doesn't show.
Brian is not present.
Okay, camera doesn't show that. Sorry, he's cut off. So there's 3 of us. That's Holly, Dan, and Patty voted yes. Laura abstained. Brian is absent.
Correct.
Okay, excellent. Congratulations, DV Fiber. Job well done.
Thank you
Patty,
very much.
Go ahead, Laura.
I just would like to extend my thanks to all of the folks from DV Fiber for all their work on this and for their flexibility today as well. Thank you.
Well said. All right, Christine, CV Fiber is up next. This is a question.
Yes.
And, all right, so let's move on to CV Fiber's construction grant request. You want to tee us up?
Yes, we reviewed this request and in the last meeting, and I think the board was pretty supportive at that point. But I think, again, this is a follow-up from the last meeting where the presentation was made. So it's really, this is for Dan and you, Patty, to ask any additional questions.
Okay, CV Fiber, are you prepared that do you want to make any additional statements at this time?
This is Jerry Diamantidis. Hi, everybody. Good to be back before the board again. We gave a pretty extensive presentation last week, and we spent most of our time in discussion with Holly and Laura present. I don't know if there's any additional follow-up that to those discussions or questions. It felt like a pretty successful meeting to me, but that's not my decision, is it?
Okay, I'm going to ask a question. And if you feel comfortable answering in public session, please do so. If you feel it needs to go to executive session for proprietary reasons, you can certainly note that as well. I would just like to ask if you could summarize your assessment of competitive threats from private entities in your CUD area, whether that's consolidated Comcast or any small telecom providers. Have you assessed that side of the business, and what communication are you in with the private entities relative to their efforts of building out on their end, whether it's through RDOF or other incentives that they have on their end to build? I just wanted to get a sense of what's happening on the private side and how that affects your business plan.
Sure, that's a very good question. A couple of things. First of all, as we had explained previously, we are totally staying away from areas that are currently served or in the process of being served, and we are keeping aware of new build that's going on by incumbents. As we had explained earlier, we have what we call the donut hole in our service area, where we're basically staying out of certain towns that are already meet the service requirements. And we are aware of some areas where build out is currently happening. That said, let me go in 2 directions here. First of all, if the incumbents or the existing commercial providers get there first, so be it. There's a lot that we don't have control over, and if they get there, they get there, and then we are no longer going to prioritize that area. That's one aspect of it. But the second aspect of it, after having analyzed our own situation and the business end of all of this, you can see how the incumbents have cherry-picked the areas that they do serve. And the entire reason that we're here and doing what we're doing as volunteers is to fill in the gaps where it doesn't make business sense for the incumbents to exist. So we are only spending our grant money in the areas that are underserved. In most of those areas, there is no foreseeable future of, I mean, they're not going to all of a sudden become profitable with the take rates and the dead end situations and all that we discussed last time for quite a while. Those circumstances aren't going to change. What may happen is you may see some extension along the fringes. And we have had discussions with the folks in the southern end of our area, TDS, and we've spoken with them about what their plans are. And really, it comes back to, if they get there before us, they get there before us. But again, their plans, and we don't know the exact details of their plans, of course, but there are still areas that are going to be a financial loss to serve. And that's why CV Fiber is most likely going to end up serving them for that reason. And Patty, if there's any individual point on that you would like to have further discussion, I'm happy to do that. I mean, even with the RDOF, most of the RDOF areas, the winners and the funding that they got in our area really isn't enough to tip the balance to make it profitable. And there is a percentage loss that's allowable, and it may be on the incumbent to take their 5% allowable loss and let our 25 households be a part of that. We're a small player in all of this, but we're the only ones that are going to get to those folks out in rural central Vermont. Nobody else is going to get there.
Yep, I know too well.
Understood.
Dan, do you have any questions to follow up on this?
I don't really, but as we were talking, I mean, I read through it before, and so it looks really good. I'm just curious, as we were talking, this popped up in my mind, so I guess I'll put it out there. With the work that you've been doing with Washington Electric Co-op and the way your routes have evolved, have there been changes in the last recent months or year, I guess, that provide you opportunities for customers that you didn't have before, or efficiencies that you didn't have maybe before?
Well, we like to consider ourselves working in partnership with WEC. We don't have a we don't have a fund sharing agreement of any kind, but we recognize, let me put it this way, describe our partnership. Their membership and our future subscribers are to a large degree the same folks. So, and WEC very much understands the importance of getting fiber out to their membership. And in that sense, we're working together. We have already started doing our ride outs and identifying our make ready requirements. And we're going to, and we already have been reaching out to WEC to make sure that the things that they need are in place for them to be able to do the make ready that we require. For example, they've recently hired additional personnel to help us with the make ready, and we have provided them with our pole inventory information, and we're also providing them with analysis of that pole inventory information to help them. So I don't know if I can say that we see an opportunity for additional subscribers because of our relationship with WEC, but I would say that the both of us are working towards the same ends, which is to bring high-speed internet to the WEC membership that also happens to be the residents in the CV fiber district area. And let me know if that was sufficient or if I went too far afield for you.
No, that's sufficient.
Okay, any other
Thank you.
questions, Holly?
So I'm just doing a little cleanup here, Jerry, so this is just by way of wrapping up loose ends for me. So are there any incumbent telco carriers in your CUD besides Consolidated, and then and who would they be?
Oh, sure. We have TDS to the south. And of course we have Waitsfield Telecom, who's going to be our provider. And we also have Comcast is out there providing their Xfinity service. I don't know if they still call themselves Comcast or not. And then there is another small provider in Northfield. Somebody can remember their name. I can't remember it off the top of my head. A very small family organization, not Waitsfield Telecom, even far smaller than they are. And then of course there's I guess we have some overlap with Kingdom Fiber, not NEK, but the private entity.
So I'm only interested for these purposes in TDS, I guess Northfield.
Transvideo is the one in Northfield.
Okay. And they're a telecom provider. And I guess Kingdom is a carrier for less than 5 counties. So have you had an application or an discussion with any of those carriers? I'm not talking about Comcast here.
For applications, that would be poll applications.
No, let me correct myself here. Have you had a request? Have you requested of them to collaborate with you in providing service to your district?
Not yet. Not yet. I think that's a real opportunity for TDS, because I think that they are actually going to maybe be the first ones that are going to implement a relatively large scale. And I still don't, from a business financial perspective, I don't see how they're going to be able to get into the far reaches of our district. But we have not, I've spoken with them, but we haven't begun any kind of collaborative effort to see if there's a win-win situation for the both of us here. And to be honest with you, Holly, it's not clear to me yet what that would look like either. But it's something that's certainly on the table. I wouldn't dismiss it out of hand at all.
Does your business plan, I'm asking you as though you hadn't submitted your map to us and so on and so forth, so just pardon the framing of the question. Does your universal service plan include building over those territories, the territories of those carriers?
Let's make sure we're really clear about how we use language here.
I would like that. Are you traveling through the served territory of any of those carriers to get to other unserved or underserved addresses?
So, two things. One is we are designing to a full capacity, which even if not built, the design will allow for extension throughout all of our towns. If we decide to do that build, that's from a design perspective. From a build perspective, we are only using our grant funds to get to the underserved. And we talked about our donut hole where we avoid entire areas and we lose half of the we lose half of the residences in our district because of that, because those are the concentrated, more densely populated areas. And as we get to the underserved, the only type of overbuild, and I'm doing this in air quotes, isn't necessarily overbuild. It may be the case that our fiber is hanging on the same fiber as, and I'll just use this as an example, as TDS, because we have to be on Route 12 because of the way Vermont's roads are, where you know, most of the main roads are in the valley, along the river, whichever river it might be, and then everything branches up and usually doesn't go over the mountain. You need the other valley to get to the other side. So if we have to share pole usage along there, we do, but we're not using federal funds for any drops that would come from an overbuilt area. And our intention is, to the extent possible, avoid any such, again, with air quotes, overbuild.
And then obviously, therefore, your business plan as it's submitted is not dependent on a take rate through those overbuilt areas.
Oh, no. And you saw our business plan has a relatively light take rate that we don't need to quote here out, and also a ramp up take rate. So we're expecting things to ramp up over time, not start at 100% go.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Jerry,
Holly, you're on mute, Patty.
Yeah, one final question for me. Can you talk a little bit about funds, additional funds you're able to leverage relative to grant dollars?
Well, of course, the biggest set of funds right now that we're leveraging are the town ARPA funds, and we have multiple towns. I think we're pushing $300,000. Get a shaking head from my colleagues. Yeah, we're pushing $300,000, and we're doing a kind of a second phase of outreach here to make sure that all the towns are aware of what we're doing, and we're hoping to use those funds to offset the cost of the drops, which we see as a potential barrier to entry for folks that may be able to make the X number of dollars per month, but that drop cost may be the problem for them. So that's what we've been working out with the towns, and the towns so far seem to be amenable to all of that. And then I have to tell you, even though we hope for more infrastructure funds from the federal government, I am personally doing outreach to the philanthropic community to see what could possibly be out there for different avenues, because it's not just the construction. We are very interested and very concerned about the accessibility, and I don't mean necessarily the physical accessibility, but the technological accessibility, having the right computer, having understanding how broadband could be beneficial to someone that really doesn't have that kind of internet experience. We believe in doing that outreach. We think it's as important as having the fiber on the poles, really. So we're trying to figure out where funds might come from that, and some of it might be federal, and some of it hopefully will be from the philanthropic community.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from board or staff?
I got to make the point that I was pretty impressed that they used conservative take rates in their business plan. It's very solid and has and has upside.
And is the board packet correct on the dollar amount in this instance? $12,289,273.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Patty, I'd like to make a motion.
Thank you.
That the board approve the grant to CB Fiber in the amount of $12,289,273. Did I say that?
1,000.
I said, $12,289,273. Have I got that right?
12 million.
12 million. Oh, Lord. Okay.
Getting close.
Sorry, my zeros are all in the wrong place. 12,289,000. I'm glad you're listening. This is a really important piece to listen to. $12,289,273 in construction money in accordance with their application that's submitted in the testimony on the record.
I'll
I
second that.
second that motion. Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Patty, I would just like to insert that I particularly appreciated the approach. This is my personal opinion, the approach of CV Fiber in looking at the lay of the land, the use of public money, and their long-term goals, particularly with the take rate, to reiterate Christine Hallquist's comment. This is an application well done. Thank you.
Yeah, I will echo that too. Very well done. Great work, all of you. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, congratulations, CV Fiber.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'd like to just give a note of appreciation here, because we know the work that you're doing is quite difficult, and we had to jump through a number of hoops. And I know I said this before, but I'm going to say it again. It's appropriate that we jump through these hoops, and it's appropriate that you hold the bar up there for us and make sure that we're achieving what we're supposed to be achieving. And we really appreciate that. And we're looking forward to making a change in Central Vermont for generations. Thank you for all you do for CV Fiber.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Thank you.
Go get them. Okay, who is next on our list? Christine, would next be NEK?
Yes.
Okay. Let's take, I don't want to sign off, but let's take a few minutes to get ourselves some food, and then we'll jump right over to NEK.
Holly, you want some food?
Actually, I really want to run out of the room for a minute. I'll think about food. There's no liquid in here other than what we brought in, right? Okay.
Just we know that's not muted.
It's not muted.
It's not muted.
Should we mute it?
Probably should. Great.
Greece.
So how long were you there for?
We were there for 2 weeks.
Christine, how much time do you want to take before we jump in?
We're good.
We're ready to go.
Okay. All right, so NEK is up next on our list to review. Pull up. NEK is requesting an additional $4,966,800 is the way I understand this.
That's correct. And this was presented last meeting as well. So is really for Dan and you, Patty, to ask additional questions.
Okay. Do we have folks from NEK here?
Hi, Patty.
Hello.
Hey, everybody.
Hi, Krista. Hi, Evan. So we'll kick it off and start it with, is there anything in addition that you want to share to tee us up before we, Dan and I ask a few questions and open it up to the other board members?
So I can, given the questions that you've asked, I did some map work. I can let you know that besides the actual backhaul route that is in place, which really most of these places you only have one choice to get from point A to point B. But besides the backhaul route, we only overbuild an additional 2.8 miles of fiber in order to reach 51 miles of unserved addresses. So that's a 5% overbuild, and in terms of addresses, it's 25 addresses out of 212. And I think the second question that has been posed to date is questions around competition in our area. There are 3 providers that are in the process of offering fiber. Those are Consolidated, Tilson, and Kingdom Fiber. And we are in conversations with each of those, which I can go into an executive session as to what those conversations look like.
Okay, before we go into executive session.
Sorry, and I'll just do, I guess, just for the purposes, a brief summary. The purpose of the grant is twofold. The first purpose is because we have 4 towns that have voted to contribute ARPA funds, and so this is part of the matching grant section of the ARPA fund. In addition to that, we are concerned about making sure that we have enough make-ready available for our construction build and the pace at which we're trying to move. And GMP has the most available resources and budget to ensure that. So we added in the additional miles that are available to us that are in GMP territory. So that's the broad purpose of why we did the amendment this close to the last application.
Okay.
Just
Any other
can you state what
questions?
towns? Can you summarize what towns?
Yep, the ARPA town funds are coming from Walden. In addition to that, Peacham. Peacham helped fund an additional backbone piece that reached Groton, that enabled Groton to participate in our ARPA program. Groton's participation then enabled Rygate to participate in the backbone and backbone extension program. So those are the 4 towns that have approved ARPA funding.
Are addresses in any other town hit?
Yeah, addresses for the ARPA. So the backbone that goes from Peacham to Walden goes through Danville. And then that's just for the ARPA funded pieces. And then outside of the ARPA funded pieces, the additional GMP area is primarily in Danville in the northern half where the Kingdom Ardolph areas are, and St. Johnsbury, again, Kingdom Ardolph areas. And it touches into Wheelock, a couple of addresses at the end of a couple of lines, and it touches into Linden.
Okay, any other questions from the board or staff?
Krista, I have a couple of questions. This is Holly.
Hi, Holly.
You said that the overlap in the Danville area run by Tilson is only 25 residences?
That's correct. 2.8 miles and 25 premises.
Okay. And so are you planning to, is your business plan contingent upon overbuilding, not as in from getting to point A to point B, but overbuilding the Tilson system?
No, we do not have any of the existing Tilson system in the plan. We do have addresses in the Tilson plan, and they're identified as, and this is how they were identified originally. We have a very, very small percentage of addresses identified this way, but they are identified as future plan may be needed. And the reason for that is that there are a few addresses that were left off of the Tilson build at the end. Frankly, those addresses have density that, in our opinion, is warrants them to complete their private build and doesn't require grant money for those extensions. And it's very important to our CUD to maintain the integrity of how we are doing our work across the system. And so there are other areas, cable areas and areas like that, that have these onesie, twosie addresses that, that we will find a solution to. And the intent is to deal with those addresses in roughly year 4.
I think what you just said is that your universal service plan is contingent on Tilson operating its system and extending its system to those unserved addresses.
No.
Okay.
No, the universal service plan does assume that Tilson is operating. We have to assume that, right? Like that's
Yeah.
really a requirement.
Agreed.
Right? And it assumes that there will be, we have, I have to get the business plan open, but we have assigned a certain amount per address that is not covered in that would require going through massive amounts to get to individual addresses. So we've assigned a certain amount of funds to get to those addresses in later years.
So I was just trying to clarify because I was confused by this comment that you think Tilson should extend their commercial service to those addresses. So that comment is not part of your universal service plan. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
But would it help your universal service plan if we help Tilson fund those addresses?
I don't think so. That's a choice that we can make in year 4 when we are looking at the next rounds of grant funding, or year 3.
Yeah, but listen to me carefully. If your universal service plan considers serving those addresses even 4 years away, but you could serve them on the Tilson network if we funded them, wouldn't it help your universal service plan to fund Tilson in reaching those addresses?
So I think we need to be really careful here in how we're talking about who funds what addresses. So, you know, there is
I agree.
a universal service.
Executive session.
I thought so.
Yeah, this seems like
Are you
executive
saying that
session.
you have to be careful because of proprietary interests? Or are you saying we have to be careful for being clear on the understanding of the definition of universal service plan? What's your basis for wanting to be careful?
I think
It's
she.
not necessary.
No, she's just thinking.
So I did not raise the executive session discussion, so I thought you were talking to somebody else. I'm happy to provide the legal argument, and then in terms of our interactions with Tilson and what we expect or don't expect them to do and how we intend or don't intend to interact with them, that is definitely executive session.
Right, clear. So I was really looking for that.
Yours is a hypothetical, right? Holly?
Mine is a hypothetical, and I was looking for your legal response.
So I think that Tilson's argument that was in the board packet is fundamentally flawed because it assumes that they're providing a universal service plan for Danville. And as a matter of law, a universal service plan is either one that is for the entire communications union district, and that's every address, or is for a municipal that's not part of a CUD or joined a CUD after June 1st, 2021. And Danville was a founding member of NEK Community Broadband, and therefore any universal service plan is part of the universal service plan that exists for the entire communications union district. And so if there's only one universal service plan for the entire communications union district, then there can't, by definition, be two universal service plans that need to be compared.
And have you thought about the fact that then this overbuild is created in order to achieve your universal service plan, admittedly in year 4, and whether this is whether it is most cost effective for NEK to be building those out?
I would take into executive session an explanation of how those addresses are dealt with in our business plan.
Thank you.
Are there any other public questions?
All right, seeing none, let's convene an executive session to deal with the proprietary nature of the information we want to go into next. So we will leave this site and we will go into an NEK executive session site.
That will include staff and NEK.
Yes.
Did we CTC in this round?
Yeah, we should have CTC as well.
Okay. See you on the
See
other
you there.
side. Okay, no action was taken in executive session. And we have in front of us a proposal from NEK Broadband for construction grant amendment request for $4,966,800.
I move that we approve that $4,966,800 grant.
Thank you, Laura. Who was the second?
Holly.
Holly seconded. Thank you very much. Is there any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any
2.
opposed? Is Dan out of the room?
Dan is back in the room in time to vote, yay or nay.
Yes.
So Dan, your affirmative vote on NEK broadband of $4,966,800.
Yes.
Okay. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion carries, full board support.
Thank you very much, but I really appreciate your work.
Thank you. We appreciate your work as well. Thank you very much. Okay, next on the agenda is Otter Creek.
Until
No.
Tilson appeal.
Listed in my order, it says Otter Creek. Did we-
So I think it's just,
We're going the same order we were going in the morning.
just moving time.
All right, the list in the packet says Otter Creek. I'm happy to go with the Tilson request if that is the will of the group.
Yep.
Yes.
Heads are nodding.
Okay, Christine, you want to tee it up?
Yeah, sure. This is, Tilson had come in with a request to file an application for a grant to cover the Danville area. Staff rejected that application based on the fact that it conflicts with the NEK broadband universal service plan. And now Tilson has filed an appeal, and this is the appeal from Tilson to the board. So we'll turn it over to Tilson to speak.
Okay. Is there a representative from Tilson available?
Yeah, this is Tim Schneider. I'm general counsel with Tilson.
Hello, Tim.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
I'm a little bit flexible on location here with the schedule changes. I appreciate it. No disrespect intended by taking this from my car. So I'm here. I'm Tim Schneider. I'm here on behalf of Tilson Broadband. I'm not sure if we've had the opportunity to appear before the board previously. We definitely put the small communications carrier. We are. Some of you may know us, know Tilson itself. We're headquartered in Portland, Maine. So our company's core business is designing, building telecommunications networks all over the country, including rural deployments. And for more than a decade now, we've been advising state and local and tribal governments all over the country. So our deployment in Vermont was our opportunity to put all those pieces together and actually deliver broadband to rural communities directly. So Tilson Broadband is less than a year old. We were enabled by a CARES Act grant, went from concept to lit fiber in a matter of months. And now we are currently providing fiber to the home service in Danville, Lunenburg, St. Johnsbury, where our headquarters is, and with the support of the state of Vermont through CARES Act funding. I think you all have in your board packet our appeal. We submitted a notice of intent to respond for an Act 71 construction grant on May 5th. And then as Christine mentioned, we were promptly, within the 5-day timeline, denied because our application was deemed to conflict with that of NEK, since Danville is within the territory of NEK. I don't know if it makes sense to restate those arguments there. I think we laid out our case, and I know this board has spent a great deal of time thinking through the appropriate interpretation of the act and how to understand the issue of how to resolve a conflict between an eligible entity like Tilson Broadband, which is a small communications provider, and the CUD who could serve the same territory. But I'm happy to answer questions, or I could walk through that argument, whichever is most helpful to the board.
Okay, Holly has her hand up.
Tim, I'm interested in whether or not you agree that our definition of universal service plan is district-wide. Are you in agreement that your plan or application conflicts with the universal service plan of the CUD?
So we've not been able, yeah, thanks for the question. We haven't been able to view the universal service plan of the CUD. That's not a public document. It seems like it's only been approved in executive session or reviewed in executive session by the board. We do have Danville's business plan, which they've shared publicly on their website. And as far as we can tell, that didn't call for serving the community of Danville, at least in the near term. It wasn't something they modeled. That's the most recent publicly available information we have. It may be that the board has different information that is not shared with us or the public at large that suggests that they intend to timely serve Danville. So we don't think there's a conflict, but
yeah, but how could you know? I'm also interested in your comment that I believe what you said was, and NEK determined that there was a conflict in what your proposal was in their universal service plan. Is that what your understanding is?
That's what we heard from staff, was that one of the reasons that we were denied is that they reached out to NEK and NEK stated that there was a conflict between our proposed universal service plan and theirs, and that was the reason for our denial.
I'd like to propose, Patty, that we correct that understanding. We've looked at the universal service plan of NEK, and the board, I believe, has made a determination that the proposal of Tilson does not present a universal service plan and does not, and that their application is in conflict of NEK. And I think that in reviewing this application for appeal, we need to ensure that we correct the understanding of both the applicant and the process here to make it clear that we need to make that determination.
So I'd like to get some clarity. So I'm not sure what you're saying. I don't think we did make a determination. I think, is what you're saying?
I'm saying we in the board need to make that determination. Me too. Yes. Maybe there was too many nods in there.
I was confused. I was like, I remember that.
Yeah. Well,
It says that we need to provide a rationale. We need to provide a rationale why we reject the applicant's proposal. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm trying to do. Okay.
Okay.
And what I heard was that the CUD made the determination and that staff reported that the CUD had made the determination, and that's what they reported out to the applicant. And I just wanted to make it clear that the CUD does not make that determination. And on appeal, the board makes that determination.
Yeah, that's helpful. And no disrespect intended to staff. They have a very tight timeline.
None for me
5
either.
days. So,
Okay. And we're all new in getting this right, so not to worry.
Yeah, Tim, this is Laura Spilly. I have a question for you. So related to Holly's question about whether or not you were aware if you were in conflict with their universal service plan. I heard you say you didn't know that. Did you reach out to work with the CUD? The CUD reach out to work with you? I think optimally we would, from this seat and from the legislature, when they crafted this legislation, there were two goals we were looking for. We were looking for accountability and universality. And so that definitely is a place for folks like yourself to work with CUDs, which are accountable to the people in the towns that have elected to form them. So can you talk a little bit about why your application is not coming in through the CUD or in collaboration with the CUD or?
yeah, sure. I mean, we have been able to work constructively with NEK on a lot of other issues. Been talking to them since at least November. But on this particular issue, we've really been unable to reach consensus. So, for example, Tilson Broadband responded to their RFP, but ultimately didn't elect to propose serving the entire CUD, and they're really looking for a partner to do that. We had good collaboration on Make Ready that helped NEK move to the front of the line for some of their grant funded proposals, get them moving in Concord. And we've been in close collaboration, sharing our build plans so we can coordinate and avoid overbuilding. And we have some ongoing discussions right now. So Tilson has redundant backhaul to New York, and Boston is part of its, as part of its normal operations and to be able to provide redundancy. And so we've been having some, I think, constructive discussions on how to lease fiber and potentially share that backhaul, because, as this group I'm sure knows, getting redundant backhaul out of Northern Vermont is not an easy task. The conversations on this particular issue, NEK was clear that they didn't see a path for funding for Tilson Broadband, and I think at least I think the impression is that it's a zero-sum game. So any funds that go to Tilson Broadband won't be available to NEK, and I don't blame them for not wanting to go down that road. And I guess the approach taken to date, that I think where the CUD appears to have some strong say in whether a small communications provider gets funding, it doesn't really set up a good baseline for negotiations, because they hold all those cards, right?
Well, Yeah.
We don't have, we don't have, so I hear the collaboration. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but so I will just say that my second question, I think, is if you understand that in order to be an applicant, you actually have to have a universal service plan for the entire CUD that doesn't conflict with the CUD. And so
Yeah,
do you
I heard.
understand that your application does not meet those two things?
I think that's an issue of legal interpretation, and I heard NEK's interpretation of the statute. If that's the board's interpretation, then that may be a dead end for us because we certainly don't have plans to serve the entire service territory of a CUD. I guess I had read the statute a bit differently than the interpretation NEK advanced. It seems like the statute does anticipate the possibility of a conflict between a proposal from a small communications provider and that of a CUD, and ask the board to make a determination in the event of such conflict. I mean, that seems like in the language of the statute.
Yeah, Tim, I just want to jump in quickly here, and excuse me for interrupting you, but
No problem.
in addition to what Laura said, you either have to do a universal service plan for the entire CUD area, or, and that's, I think what you are doing is the or, for a municipality that was not part of a communication union district prior to June 1, 2021. And
Yeah.
Danville is part of NEK. So just by statute, the language of the statute is what's going to prevent you from getting grant funds. And as Laura said, our goal is to encourage you to work through the NEK model, because that's the statute was set up to move funds to CUDs. That's the overall intent. Yes, there's room around the edges for a few potential gray areas, but it's very explicit. And I think your best approach is to work through NEK rather than come to us directly for grant dollars, because
I mean,
it's either you provide a universal service plan for the entire CUD, I don't think that's what you want to do, or you are providing a plan for Danville, but Danville's not eligible because they're part of NEK.
So that's the first time that I've heard that interpretation of the statute from this board, and if that's the board's position, I agree that that would foreclose our proposed universal service plan to serve the town of Danville. I think that there's an alternative reading of the statute. So section 8086E, clearly contemplates the possibility of conflicts between a CUD and a non-CUD. I don't know how to read that language consistent with the idea that there couldn't be two competing proposals for a distinct area. I guess more broadly, I'm not sure what, if any, areas would be eligible for small communications providers within the state if we removed that, and the statute clearly contemplated that small communications providers could receive Act 71 grants.
For towns that are not in CUDs.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so I confess I'm not sure which locations those are.
This
Town
is
of Underhill.
I'd like to add for your benefit that the reason why you've never heard the board articulate that reading is because it never has before. So
Okay.
welcome to the party. And the section sub E of 8086 that you're talking about does invite the board to decide whether there is a conflict. And so I guess what my colleagues are saying here is that even if you were eligible because you had a universal service plan, we won't reach the question of whether or not there's a conflict here. But it does, to me, I think there's that open question of how could you have a conflict unless you were coming in as an eligible provider as a small carrier. I understand how you got to that reading is what I'm trying to say to you.
Yeah,
yes, there is another, we are talking about that as well. So there is another element to all of this, and this is whether or not the CUD is in an overbuild situation on your on your system. And my understanding is that you are not intending to build this portion that your application regards, this portion of the network, without grant funding. Is that, can you comment on that? Are you planning to build it anyway?
No, I'm not sure. I know that NEK asserted that they believe these locations should be built with private funds. I'm not sure what to do with that. I mean, the core network was unserved and was only built with support of state subsidy. It's hard to understand how extensions of that network would be economically viable without subsidy as well. And just looking at the map, these are the ends of roads, right? Like these are, so these are places that even just to reach them will require overbuilding our network. And so it seemed plain to us the most cost-effective solution would be to extend our existing network, which is why we brought this proposal to the board, or attempted to bring this proposal to the board. This is still the pre-application phase.
Tim, I will direct you to 8082-12, which is the first place where you become disqualified, and that's the actual definition of a universal service plan, which is why we then don't get to the other hurdles. And with that, Madam Chair, I'm not sure. I think we're done.
Yeah, and I don't know, Dan and Brian, do you want to chime in here? But basically, Tilson, you're getting a reading from each one of us before we actually cast a vote. But I want to hear from Dan and Brian.
I concur with what's been said.
Nothing to add, Patty.
Okay, so that's the general flavor. You know, our reading of Act 71 basically says you're not eligible.
Even though you are a small carrier.
Right. You're a small carrier, you meet that definition. We want to see you continue to do good work, but our words are trying to encourage you to work through and with NEK. Figure out ways to leverage a partnership there, and that would be the best approach forward.
Yeah, so does the board have I guess my question here is, does the board have a recommendation for how that should happen? Or
if you could show
a proposed path forward there?
I have a personal opinion, Tim. If you could show that you cannot get the attention of the CUD, that you are more cost effective in the build out than the CUD could be and more timely, if you could show that your build out should be in the best public interest, then I think you could come to a public meeting and say that in the context of the CUD's application. But it doesn't help you here.
Yeah, I'm just curious. So I wear a couple hats when I'm not here. I'm also work on the board of the Maine Connectivity Authority, and I'm sort of curious about this larger problem that you have. So your counterpart in Maine, so we have locations in Danville that are extensions to our network that reaching them will require overbuild of these network. NEK has said 4 years. So what is the proposed path for the board to provide service to those locations if we are not able to extend without subsidy? Because what we tried to submit here was the pre-application, in which we would then submit an application that would provide the documentation that you just requested, right? Like our business plan, sort of something you could use to evaluate cost effectiveness. But frankly, like it seems we sort of couldn't get to that screen where we get to provide that information here. So what's the path to those locations?
So our plan for Danville is the NEK CUD.
It must be included in their universal service plan. And so what you would effectively have to do in a business case, I'm looking at my colleagues here to see if they disagree, but you would have to show the CUD that you can do it more cost effectively and more timely than they.
Show them that you can be an asset to them. You can get it done faster, and that they, like your being funded through them helps them get to someplace else.
But they have no concurrent obligation to the board to provide service to those locations, do they?
So
yes, they do.
Okay.
It's within their district and they're unserved, they're on the hook.
Right.
Okay, and so is this, I just still sort of working through this because this is a novel approach and doesn't seem to be reflected in the board's previous deliberations. For example, with Maple and Stoneham. So it's at the position, is the board formally adopting that position? Is that what happened this morning, or?
It is the legislation. I mean, it is the legislation. The definition in 8082-12 is very plain. That you are not eligible.
Are we taking a more granular look because we've had a couple of applications from small carriers? Yes, we are.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it seems to me that I appreciate the invitation to do that. We'll take that back and look at it. It seems like the place to make the kind of assertion that you proposed there would have been in the Act 71 grant process, which provided all that information. And so it sounds like there's another path that hasn't been outlined here that provides at some point in the future, Tilson would be invited to make a public presentation to the board saying we were unable to reach agreement, or is that what you're outlining there, Holly?
Yeah, I think that's one board member's opinion here.
Okay.
So just, take it as.
There's no path.
Right, and I'm going to give you another board member's opinion, and that is to negotiate and work with NEK. That's your best path forward.
And
in my opinion, as a single board member.
Same.
We are trying to get partnerships to happen, not people pit one another, not entities pitting against one another. We want to get money out the door. We want to get it to CUDs. That's our first primary focus. That's the legislation. There are a few nibbles on the edge here, but I don't want to get distracted on that stuff. The best thing for you guys to do is move forward with the CUD.
But there is nibbles on the edge does not address the fact that there is an overbuild section to this statute, and we're looking for the most cost-effective way.
Agreed.
The most Vermonters possible.
Yeah, I think just to keep us on schedule, we're in problem-solving mode here.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I really appreciate the board's time. And I guess we'll take that back to our discussions with NEK.
Okay. Christine, would you recommend a formal action here?
Yeah,
Take a vote.
Yeah, we recommend that the board reject the appeal.
All right, I'm going to make a motion that the board accepts staff's recommendation of rejecting the appeal.
Sorry. Somebody has a second.
All right, I'm going to make the motion again. I'm not sure that was heard.
It was
We heard
heard.
it and move second, Patty.
Okay, any just further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Okay, now we're moving.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Okay, so
Okay, who's up next? Is it- Is it
Otter Creek.
Otter
Creek.
Reconstruction grant.
Okay, the Otter Creek pre-construction grant is, it's really to get them the staff and help they need. It's a small grant request. But it's pre-construction in order for them to move forward with their agreements that they're working on today. And I'll turn it over to Otter Creek to talk more about it. And by the way, staff supports the request.
Hi, so I'm not sure I've met most of you, but my name is Tony Farrar. I'm the recently elected chairman of the Otter Creek CUD, and I'm here to help present our grant application and answer any questions that I can. In summary, I think Christine did a decent job of sort of one sentence summary of what we're looking for. We're asking for, I believe it's $441,000 as a part of a pre-construction grant. And the activities that we are planning to use that money for is staffing. We've hired a consultancy firm to give us some project management services, and some operating expenses, legal expenses to negotiate an agreement or a contemplated agreement with one or more potential partners. and, just some help with us negotiating one or more agreements with those potential partners. Not sure. I mean, I think from I'm not sure what you want from a background perspective on the CUD, but our our philosophy is a bit different than some of the other CUDs, and it's pretty similar to Southern Vermont CUD in that because we have the lion's share of our potential properties are already served by incumbent carriers. Our philosophy is to partner with one or more carriers to build out the rest of the network and complete the universal service plan.
Yeah, now is your request for 441,000 or 400? I saw two numbers, 421,936.
I thought it was 441. The grant
Yeah,
copy of the grant application I have is
441,000. There was two numbers in your application, 441,000. That was a budget number, but then you had something else in there about 421,936.
Yeah, I think that was a mistake.
Okay, so we're
asking for 441,000.
Great.
In the staff recommendation is an approval, and you've gone through the checklist.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm not sure if folks have questions or comments or concerns about our approach or our application, but I'm happy to try to answer.
If you look at the budget on page 3, I think it's pretty self-explanatory.
I'm going to recuse myself because I can't find this application in my board packet. And
Well, we don't include applications in the board packet.
Well, I don't have it.
Sent Thursday.
Yeah, I'm just saying that I didn't see it and I didn't get it and I didn't download it. And so I'm going to recuse myself because I'm not a contributor here.
But anyway, for the rest of you who are voting, if you go to page 3, you'll see the pre-construction budget, and you'll see it's pretty self-explanatory. There's nothing unusual in this, other than what's needed.
So I have a question about Otter Creek. How long ago did Otter Creek form?
I believe it formed in July of 2020. We just got our 18th town, I believe, in April.
Okay, so thank you, Tony. And it's Laura Sibilia that's talking to you. So Act 79 in 2019, I think it is, which is what I was just trying to look up. There were broadband innovation grants. And so I guess my question is for the staff. So have we accessed, is that money gone? Have we accessed any of that?
They've gone through the process. They did a feasibility, they did the broadband innovation grant, they did a feasibility study and a business plan.
Yeah,
Okay.
we've used
H315 pre-construction as well.
Okay,
So we're,
okay.
they're familiar with us.
Okay. Yeah, we've accessed some grant money in the past. We had some money through the Rutland Regional Development Committee. We've had a small amount of, we still have a small amount of the original grant money is left. I think it's roughly $45,000 we have left unspent. Obviously, if we don't spend the grant money, we would return it. I mean, and our goal, these are budgetary numbers. Our goal obviously is to bring this in for less if possible. So,
Tony, I want to say thank you to you all for putting this together during COVID. I won't speak for the board. I've been worried about you all in that little section there. Still a little worried about you all, and really want to encourage you to utilize the resources here. It seems like you're doing that, to talk with your neighbors and really to think out of the box and, to not be afraid to ask us questions. If there are ways for us to help you collaborate with existing providers or existing CUDs, I think all of us would like to help you do that as you're going through the process. And so I guess that's just my statement about your being. I don't have any questions about your application.
One of the issues that I'm struggling with is, as the CUD, after we pick a partner or more than one partner, and and the network is built and we're at universal service, my understanding is the CUD has an obligation to be in existence and to sort of monitor the use of those public funds over the course of 20 years, something like that. And so in our business plan, our original business plan, we had put in sort of a surcharge to help fund us during those times. But the thing, and I'm not looking for an answer, but one of the things I would offer up is that surcharge is going to wind up costing our constituents more than if we weren't in existence. I completely support having, oversight over the performance of the providers and the network and all that over time. Don't get me wrong. I'm just trying to understand how, when we get to it, I'm going to need some thinking about how we do that most efficiently. So.
Yeah. So Tony, I don't know if you can see, there's some question around the board. I have a suspicion about what you might be thinking about or talking about. And so I want to tell you, as one of the legislators that worked on the legislation for this, we have two goals that the legislature was looking at, which were accountability. So clearly our existing providers haven't gotten it done. And so we're turning to our neighbors and our towns to make sure that it gets done. That doesn't mean we can't work with our existing providers, just that we want our neighbors to make sure that our existing providers are delivering. And then universal service. So I've heard of some existing providers that have models that look at a surcharge on the bill to pay for the build out. I think they've done that in a New Hampshire town, maybe Chesterfield, and other towns. I don't know if that's the same provider, but I've heard of that type of model. But just work with the staff here. The good thing that's going on, there's differences amongst the CUDs around the state. And you have a different area than some of the other areas, and different topographical challenges, different resources that are available to you. So we've got a great staff here to work with you and help support you as you're working through that. That's my encouragement.
Thanks.
Madam Chair, I am ready to move a vote. I don't know if the rest of the board is.
Any other questions of Tony? All right, I'm going to make a motion that we approve. This is pre-construction, correct?
Yes.
Pre-construction funding of $441,000 even to Otter Creek CUD.
I'll second that.
Okay, Laura has seconded. Is there any further discussion?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay, Holly's abstain. All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And one abstention is Holly. Thank you very much, Tony, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank
Have a good
you.
day. Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, now we're into Maple.
Okay, Maple.
The presentation isn't.
So Christine, the board packet says the VCBB staff is reserving judgment on whether the board should approve the $8,686,000 construction grant request for Maple Broadband. Do you want to do an update?
Yeah, we're waiting to hear the presentation. There's some questions that we asked and CTC asked that we're going to look for in this presentation.
Okay.
So anyway, we'll turn it over to Maple to present.
Okay,
Patty, I have a question for you.
yes, Holly.
I'm just looking at our agenda and I know I have, two of us have a hard stop at 4. Could we continue the meeting for purposes of approving the minutes and the Bakuda update? I mean, I'm just worried about people who are hanging out just for that opportunity for public reporting.
So you want to conclude with enough time to take care of those minor items at the end?
Actually, the opposite. I'm proposing that we give full time to Maple, and that could take us up to 4 o'clock, which I know will be a hard stop. So I'm just wondering whether we want to table for this session the Bakuda update and the public input and the parking lot.
I think I would prefer to put them at the very end and give Maple time to do their presentation.
Yeah, so let's keep it on. Okay.
Thank you for that suggestion. Okay, Steve, you are up.
Okay, thank you. One moment. Where did it go? One moment. There it is. Okay, we've been in front of you a number of times, but I'll introduce myself again. I'm Steve Huffaker. I'm the chair of Maple Broadband, and you see in one of the other windows, Ellie DeVilliers. She's our vice chair, and then Magna Dodge. She's assumed a new role at Maple Broadband as our CFO, and we can talk a little bit more about that as we proceed. I know there's been some significant discussion about Wakefield and Champlain Valley Telecom and our relationship with them and our obligations as it relates to our shared universal service plan. We can certainly talk about that as you wish, but this intent is just to kind of help you understand what we look like. We have kind of an unusual footprint because, as you can see, those white territories are Maple Broadband, where our obligations to deploy universal service exist. And all those gray areas are where WCBT, which is an incumbent local exchange carrier, provides services. And it's not kind of a pretty footprint, as you can see. For example, you can see Weybridge, there's part of Cornwall, northern part of Cornwall is also taken up by WCBT and so forth. It's kind of an oddball layout, but there's kind of the breakdown of our coverage. Taken it as a whole, we're looking at about 595 miles of construction for Maple Broadband's territory. So again, we're trying to set a distinction between our request, our grant request, and what WCBT will be doing under separate applications. So as you can see, our first build out, which we characterized as Zone A, is our first. And then we'll be moving on to Zone B and then Zone C. We are driving towards focusing our attention on unserved and underserved addresses, and we can probably talk about that in much greater detail if you wish in executive session. I do want to spend a few minutes talking about the project team. I think it's going to be helpful in trying to inform who you're dealing with here at Maple Broadband. I'm going to just quickly kind of read off a little bit of information to help you understand at least the top 3 listed there that have really been most heavily involved in where we stand today. Magna has spent, before she retired, she spent 40 years in the finance industry. She's dealt with large financings, Sprint Spectrum senior secured non-recourse financings of $5.1 billion, with senior unsecured non-recourse funding of $750 million. That's kind of representative of the kind of work that she's done. She's worked on acquisitions with QVC, Paramount, Marvel Entertainment Group, Motown Record Company, a lot of others as well. So she's got a lot of experience at a very high level in finance, and we're really most grateful for her involvement and engagement with us because she can really lend a lot of broad and deep experience in finance as we proceed. Ellie She's been working in telecommunications industry for about 10 years. She's currently the group head of affordable access initiatives for Liquid Telecom Group, which is a multinational fiber company serving the Middle East and Africa. In her current position at Liquid, one of her key initiatives is developing a program to help smaller ISPs launch and grow their business. So just taking in those two, I guess I'd double back real quickly. Magda's focus has also been in telecommunications in her career in past years. From my perspective, I've been working in telecommunications for about 40 years. Started out, as those of you older timers, I was originally a tip and ringer. Used to be, I installed and built plain old copper infrastructures early on in my career. But near the end of my career, I worked for JP Morgan Chase for about the last 10 years doing design, build, operate for data centers in the say west of the Mississippi and in the Pacific Rim. Pacific Rim, I've done work in Australia, Hong Kong, and South Korea. Done a lot of this stuff, worked on all the media. So we worked in multi-mode and single mode fiber. As you all know, what we're talking about today, it's all single mode fiber. I also want to spend a minute talking about our relationship with Waitsville and Champlain Valley Telecom, because I think that's an item that's come up in the past. Our role as it relates to WCVT is that we finance, engineer, construct, and own a fiber to the premises network in its member towns outside of WCVT's regulated territory. We determine the location, timing, and scope of the construction. We set rates and terms and conditions for retail services and for wholesale users. And we also prepare operating and capital budgets. And then Waitsfield's responsibility, which is not insignificant, is they're responsible for building out their Maple broadband towns. They're also our network manager, and they're also our designated service provider. They're not our only service provider, they're our designated service provider. And they're also assisting us with construction. I'm going to kind of take a break on that and just give you an example of some of the support that we've gotten from them, since it is really incredible. They have the biggest, most recent contribution that they've offered to us is they're serving as our logistics support, material logistics support partner. And in that role, they're using their resources to take delivery of materials at the WCVT facility in Waitsfield. They also have folks that are managing and tracking the inventory, and they'll also be assuming the responsibility of checking out materials as the contractor needs to pick them up and deploy them wherever they're needed. Addison County Regional Planning Commission, they're the father of Maple Broadband. That's what got us started. The Broadband Innovation Grant was initiated by them. They're currently doing bookkeeping services for us, GIS services, and plenty of other services. Whatever we ask them to do, they've been quick to help. Again, they're kind of brainchild. And then Vantage Point Solutions. It seems like NRTC has had their fingerprints on a lot of the CUDs in Vermont. I guess we'll say that Vantage Point has had their fingerprints in Maple Broadband. They've already completed the high-level design. Detailed design for the phase 1 pilot project is almost done. They've also created construction bid specifications, and they'll be doing bid administration. We're working on that right now. They're also heavily involved in make-ready and right-of-way applications, and they're also, we have just recently awarded them as serving as our on-site project representative. Quick look at our build sequence considerations. We kind of set this in the priority listed there. Most important is financial viability. And we want to make sure that our focus is in accordance with the expectations of the VCBB to focus heavily on unserved and underserved addresses, and constrain to the degree possible any incidental overbuild that delivers service to others that are served. We also, as I may have mentioned in earlier presentations, we didn't accidentally make this simple. It was by intention. So the earliest part of our build project involves the least amount of complexity. We're building out 3 network hubs, and that's really the essence of it. There's no central hubs being deployed initially. We've got plenty to learn as we move on this process, and we want to not have to take it all on all at once. And then, of course, we have a geographic diversity to our network. I'm pretty impressed with our project readiness. I don't know if you'll agree with it, but high-level design is complete. We're pretty much done with the phase 1 detailed design. We have gone out to bid on phase 1A, which is about 42 miles. That design is done, and the construction bid pack was put out. We've already gone out to bid on it, and day after tomorrow, we're doing bid openings for that first 42 miles of bids. We've ordered all key materials that have concerns related to lead time challenges. A good share of the materials are in storage already. We've got Ellie, who has done an incredible job in all kinds of analytics areas, has really drilled down on make ready. We're managing in a rather granular fashion make ready process to ensure that make ready is completed in advance of the areas where we'll be doing build. Hub lease agreement we'll be signing. I'm heading out for a vacation in a couple days. Once I get back from vacation, July 25th, we'll be signing a hub lease agreement for our first hub in Cornwall. Expect to execute an agreement with a prospective contractor at the beginning of August. We have a RFP issued for the 3 equipment pads that we'll be deploying that will take delivery of the hubs. And that opening is happening at the end of the first week in August. And our overall plan is to be in construction on September 10. And if and when we are able to achieve a approval from the VCBB, we're poised to pretty much immediately initiate an agreement for marketing services. In terms of affordability, this kind of all goes without saying. I think the part that I wanted to kind of touch on briefly is that bottom bullet. We've got $335,000 worth of town ARPA contributions. We are going to do our best not to spend that money. Our hope is that if all goes well, that those funds that are provided by the towns will subsidize low-income households in the respective town that has provided the contributions. So we don't have the matching funds provision that other CUDs have utilized. We think this will be our best way to really return well for the funds that our towns have contributed to us. We're looking at for the construction grant, $8.68 million, but here's kind of a background on what we've done in the past. We've kind of started out at $3.3 million, which has gotten us to where we are right now, and those funds will pay for the entire detailed design for the entirety of our 500+ mile build. It's been supplemented a number of times with the assistance of the VCBB, including that $781,000 for materials, which we have purchased and much of which we have already stocked. Miles of construction, 180 miles, miles of backbone, 35, and 1,789 passings. Quickly, this was initially kind of a topic that a number of the CUDs addressed, which were defined in Act 71, and I wanted to touch on them very quickly. As it relates to leveraging existing private resources, Green Mountain Power is the only pole owner in our territory, and we are, again, aggressively working and shaping our applications with Green Mountain Power to optimize the unserved location broadband deployment fiber. That's the Make Ready credit that we're all aware of. Hopefully you get a sense of our project readiness, as I've characterized earlier. As it relates to providing broadband service that complies with the consumer protection and net neutrality standards, I asked our friends at WCBT to help us kind of characterize this, since they're going to be the content provider for our services that we deploy. WCBT does follow all existing consumer protection rules, standards, and regulations. They're also in compliance with the state of Vermont's new net neutrality policies and does not block unlawful content, throttle traffic on the basis of contact, engage in paid prioritization, unreasonably interfere with customer choices, or engage in deceptive or misleading marketing practices. And they also publicly disclose to consumers accurate information regarding the network management practices, performance, and commercial terms of its broadband internet access services. We talked a little about supporting low income or disadvantaged communities. This kind of comes part and parcel with the success of the CUD, and we're laser focused on this to the degree that we're able. Geographic diversity. Well, our original name was Addison County Communications Union District, and for better or for worse, our clientele is all in Addison County. We are geographically diverse to that degree. Our expectation is that we're going to engage resources in Addison County to the degree we can. For example, the RFP that's gone out for those equipment pads, they're going out exclusively to site engineering firms that are based in our county. So geographic diversity, I gave us a check on that just because we're doing the best we can under the circumstances. Affordable service options, this plays back to our efforts to try to support low income and disadvantaged communities. We're going to do our level best to do that in taking into account the fact that we've got bills to pay and we can't, we've got to be careful about how we set those prices. And then the broadband assets to be shared by multiple service providers. We're essentially following to a large degree guidance that was provided in the OSP standards that were raised earlier on by the VCBB. No less than 3 tubes of spare fibers on cables between hubs and 1 tube on cables from the OLT to the splitter. So we are providing the sparing as has been required by the VCBB as well. That's all I have for you. Thank you. Questions?
Thank you, Steve. Questions of the board and staff?
Yeah, I guess this, you've been negotiating with talking back and forth with CTC. There was several questions that was asked last week around evaluating your business plan, absent the Otelco towns. I'd like to hear CTC's thoughts about where you are in terms of the business plan. I think the CTC is basically says it's achievable, but I'd like to hear more. Tell us if you can.
Does this belong in executive session?
Yeah, probably.
I think TELUS is just gonna evaluate the most recent business plan, right?
Yeah, not get details, right? Yeah.
I don't,
Yeah, it's an overall question for now.
yeah, so TELUS, just stay away from any particulars around, I guess, anything nuanced with the telco, and just talk about the business.
Yeah, you're kind of at the opinion level as a professional opinion.
Yeah, so staying high level, the updated model is much improved over the previous model, and I'm trying to be careful of my wording, sorry. so I don't reveal any information that I'm sharing.
My immediate question is, how did it change?
I'm sorry.
I think we're going to have to ask you all to come into executive session. Patty, may I make that motion?
Yeah, let's make the motion. Okay, Holly made the motion. I'm going to second it. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, let's move over to executive session so we can freely talk.
Is anybody in here besides Mabel right now?
Oh, that's plenty of people. I was just wondering if there was things that wanted to know that should be public. Back in, and then I will